Hello, everyone. My name is Joe James, and I'm going to be talking about restorative practices today. Before I do that, though, I'm going to introduce myself and talk about why I believe that this concept is important to me. So, first of all, who I am. I'm studying to be a teacher right now. I'm currently in my undergrad for child development, but after I get my degree, I'm going to go through the teaching credential program and hopefully become an elementary school teacher. So, this subject is very important to me because of that. Currently, I've been working with children for around 6 years, not immediately because of COVID, but I've been working through after-school programs and camps. And this concept was introduced to me through my job, actually, in trainings. And so why it's important is I believe it works, first of all. I believe that restorative practice is something that can help misbehavior and conflict among students and children. And I also believe it's relationship building, it's inclusive, and it's purposeful, which is directly in line with our RLM principles that we've learned through this class. Before I talk about what restorative practices is, though, I also want to introduce its counter theory, what people use in classrooms a lot today. And that is based off of our criminal justice system. This could also be known in classrooms as zero tolerance. I'm sure you may have heard that before. It's zero tolerance policy. It's a large part of our society, and our justice system is built on it. And what it is when there's a crime, there is a punishment given for that crime. So what that means is that the overall resolution, the thing we get out of it is justice based on a punishment. Now, why that may be controversial is because it doesn't necessarily it doesn't address everybody who deals with this harm and this behavior that might be, affecting the community. So that's why we turn to restorative practices more. And in the classroom, these punishments, this criminal justice, this zero tolerance policy, it can look something like this. It can look like timeouts that we might see be given out. It can be a loss of an item or a toy for a child. It can be, once there's continued offenders, it can be a suspension. And some of the things we might hear with zero tolerance would be go to the office. Then I guess no one can have it if both people are having a conflict with a toy or some sort of situation happening. And talk to me after class, and specifically one-on-one with teacher and child talking to after class, not multiple parties involved. So, restorative practice involves all parties that are affected by behavior or conflict. It addresses the community, the victim, and the offender. It's not based on punishment, and it builds relationships out of conflict. Restorative practice actively uses conflict and harm as a tool to build relationships and create more of a community. So, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, it involves having a conversation. It involves meeting with everyone who was affected, the offender, the victim, and the community as a whole. It also involves coming up with solutions for the future that are made by the community. So not necessarily teacher-directed, but maybe student-directed community approaches to how we can fix harm and conflict. And it's being open and willing to listen. So if we look here at this little graph on the right side, we're going to look at more of a restorative practice-based education system. And it's going to go through Carlos's day, as we can see. So when he arrives to school, teachers welcome him. When he's late to first period, teachers want to talk to him and set up a meeting with his counselor. If Carlos gets in an altercation, student and peer mediators, staff intervene. They have the students sit down together to de-escalate the situation, having that conversation. And later, Carlos and other students agree to clean up the cafeteria on free period. So when you hear that, for me, at least when I first heard it too, that cleaning up does kind of sound like a punishment. But I think the biggest thing that is different from more of a zero tolerance policy is Carlos came up with that same solution himself with him and his peers. He decided that he is going to actively clean up the cafeteria based on the harm and the harm that was done to the community. And if you look on the left, there's more of the zero tolerance approach. And I'm not going to read that right now, but that just goes through kind of what a zero tolerance, crime-based, and punishment-based approach would be. So we're going to listen to this video really fast. It's about 2 minutes long, just kind of putting more in perspective these restorative practices and approaches that I've been talking about.
Conflict is a fact of life. Wherever we live and whoever we spend our time with, none of us can avoid it or its consequences completely. But when we ignore the complex causes of conflict, we fail to prevent it from arising again. The pain and anxiety of it lingers. Many of us have come to fear conflict. The way it makes us feel, the way it erodes our self-esteem, damages our relationships, and impacts the people around us. When conflict arises, we often focus on who is right and who is wrong, who is the victim and who is the perpetrator, who broke the rules, who should apologize and who should be punished. By using restorative approaches, we can guide those involved to a genuine and lasting resolution, while at the same time equipping them with the skills to successfully navigate conflict throughout their lives. It takes patience, skill, and empathy to involve all parties, a commitment to listening hard and seeking common ground. But through restorative approaches, you can discuss and map the key events and emotions that lead to conflict, recognize its impact on relationships, and empower everyone involved to find the best path out of it, repairing as much harm as possible on their way. You can provide them with a new perspective from which to understand how their conflict affects other people, directly and indirectly, and to see the harm that unresolved conflict can do to friendships, families, and communities. From there, the focus is on finding real solutions, not taken from a rule book, but tailored to individual needs. In schools, care homes, prisons, and beyond, there is a growing recognition of the power in using restorative approaches to conflict, because it's clear that the lessons of a single conflict, creatively and successfully resolved, can change lives and last a lifetime.
So now that we have a better understanding about what restorative practices and approaches are, so a better look at how we can actually put it into practice and some of the guidelines we can follow when utilizing it at schools or in society. First of all is the concept and the idea of not giving in to punishment. Punishment holds power, and especially as a teacher, it's thought of a way to make your classroom behave. Having punishment be a part of your tools you can use to, decrease misbehavior. It's kind of a fear that if you misbehave, there will be a consequence. And really, I think thinking about where that comes from and why that is important, because who are you really addressing when you have punishment being involved in your classroom? Does it really fulfill the needs of the victim, the offender, or the community? It really fulfills the needs as the teacher because you get a quick solution to a problem, but you're not really having anyone feel fulfilled in their conflict or in harm. Now, early introduction, I believe, is important so that the concepts can have a lasting impact throughout middle school, throughout high school, and even beyond. So I believe that even in preschool and elementary school, some of the early adaptations and some of the early ideas of restorative practices are important to implement. Giving time to conflict, looking as an opportunity rather than a negative necessarily, making sure that you utilize the time that you have and give it enough time so everyone is heard and addressed. Active listening and teaching active listening to your students and using it yourself and modeling that behavior. Having open-ended questions, making sure that the children and the students are guiding the conversation so that they come up with the solutions as a community rather than you teacher directing what you want to have happen. And the community making decisions, like I said, that's important. It comes from them. It has a more lasting impact. In community circles. And community circles are a little bit like this. They look like this. It's an actual circle with the students sitting around in chairs. And it's a conversation that you can open with your day. You can end it at the end of the day. You can do it once a week. But it addresses and discusses the needs of the school and the community. And it comes with everybody coming together about harm or conflict they want to resolve. So it's a very useful and practical tool to kind of go over things that may have happened throughout the day, throughout the week, things that you want to bring up, things that other students feel like they want to bring up. And it's a very open and inviting place to kind of have your voice be heard and feel like you have a piece and a part of the classroom. So in conclusion, being a leader involves bringing people together, community-made decisions, seeking positive change, and listening. And I believe that these all align with restorative practice. And it's kind of the model and foundation that I've just been talking about today. And it also involves being a leader. They're directly aligned. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. Thank you guys so much. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.